I know everyone thinks that their family is weird, but let me tell you about all the crazy stuff that happened to me last year. Then you'll realize that your family is probably pretty normal. I'm Ellie, and I'm just a regular 17-year-old girl. I live with my mom, Carol. My dad died when I was young, so it's always just been my mom and we're really close. One day, about a year ago, I needed to find some old clothes for a school project. I was studying textiles and needed some old clothes to upcycle. My mom was out, so I couldn't ask her for any, but I thought there might be some in the attic. I hadn't been up there before, and I was surprised how much stuff there was. I found lots of boxes of her old stuff. As I was looking, I found some old photo albums. I opened one and had a look through. It was pictures of Mom when she was young, only a bit older than me. It was so cool to see these pictures. I'd never seen them before, and Mom never spoke about life before I was born. I wondered why she kept the album in the attic instead of the house. Then I saw some pictures of when she was pregnant. It was weird. She looked much younger in the pictures than I thought she would be. She was 41 when she had me, yet here she only looked about 20. Then I realized she must have had a baby many years before she had me. I turned the page and saw a picture of her holding a baby dressed in pink, but it wasn't me. There were pictures of this baby growing up, and as a child, I had an older sister. By now, I had forgotten all about finding old clothes. I took the photo albums out from the attic and carried on looking through them. When Mom came home, I confronted her with the albums. When she saw them, she looked so shocked. She started shouting at me for snooping through her things. I asked her if she had a baby before me, and she said yes. Before I was born, she had a girl called Melanie, who was her first child. She lived here until she was 18. Then Melanie did something terrible and ran away from home. That was the last time Mom had seen her. Mom grounded me for going through her things and said she would never talk about Melanie again. But I couldn't believe I had a big sister, and Mom had never told me. I was so angry at my mom that I didn't talk to her for ages. I kept thinking about what Melanie could have done to make her run away. Maybe she was an arsonist or a shoplifter, but whatever it was, I couldn't believe it was so bad that Mom had never told me that she existed. I had a right to know. A few days later, Mom was cooking dinner, and I mustered up the courage to ask her more about my sister. But when I mentioned her, Mom got so angry she knocked the pan of spaghetti all over the floor. She shouted at me to go away and to stop asking questions. I ran to my room and locked myself in. I realized that if I wanted to find Melanie, then I would have to do it myself. I went onto the computer and searched for Melanie Harding. I found loads of Facebook profiles of people with that name. I scrolled through the pictures looking for the right one. Then I saw her. She had blonde hair and the same bluey gray eyes that both Mom and I have. It was her. It took me a while, but I managed to drum up the courage to send her a message. Hey, my name is Ellie. I'm looking for a Melanie that I'm related to. I wondered if that is you. I would like to get in touch. I pressed send. The next day, I kept checking my phone to see if she had seen it. It said that she had read the message, but she didn't respond. I felt so weird. Why wouldn't she want to get in touch with me? Then late the next night, I got a message back. Hi, yes, I'm that Melanie. I'm sorry I've never been in touch. I just thought it would be easier for everyone that way. Anyway, I hope you are well and happy. M. I was so pleased that she responded. Over the next few weeks, we sent messages back and forth, talking about each other's lives. She told me that she worked as a receptionist at a doctor's office in the next town. She lived with her boyfriend, Mike, and 2 cats. We had loads in common. We both loved strawberry ice cream and Disney films, and we both hated spiders. I didn't talk to her about our mom or ask why she left, with the conversation being so good. I didn't want to rush into anything serious, even though I was dying to know. Then one day, Mom found out. I had left my phone downstairs in the kitchen, and Mom had seen a message from Melanie pop up on my phone. She shouted at me for going behind her back and threatened to ground me. But I shouted back and told her that she shouldn't have lied to me and that she was a terrible mom. I grabbed my bag and stormed out of the house. I knew where I had to go. I wanted to find Melanie, so I caught a bus to the next town to find her. I didn't know the name of the doctor she worked for, so I just went from one office to another asking about Melanie. Then I walked into one and saw a woman on the phone. She looked like an older version of me. It was her. I stood in a corner and waved to her. I thought that she would be pleased to see me, but when she realized who I was, she looked scared. When she got off the phone, she walked up to me and asked me what I was doing at her workplace. I told her that I wanted to surprise her. She told her colleagues that she was taking a break, and she took me to a coffee shop down the road. When she sat down, she told me that I shouldn't have come looking for her. I felt so crushed. I couldn't believe that I had found out I had a sister, only for her not to want anything to do with me. I asked her why she left, and she said it was because she knew that Carol would be a much better mom than she could have been. I wasn't expecting her to say that. I stood up, knocking my chair over. People in the cafe turned and looked at what was going on, but I didn't care. Wait, I don't understand. Does this mean you're actually my mom? I shouted out. Oh my God, what do you mean? Melanie said. She tried to get me to sit down so she could explain. I don't think she wanted to make a scene, but I didn't care. I shouted at her to answer my question. Yes, she said. I'm your real mom. I don't get it, I shouted back at her. My mom's Carol. Melanie shook her head and told me the truth. Carol is actually her mom, not mine. I couldn't believe it. The woman I thought was my mom all my life was in fact my grandma? I don't believe you, I screamed as I ran out of the cafe crying. I ignored Melanie running after me. I never wanted to see her again. I caught the bus home in tears. Why would Melanie say such a horrible lie? When I got home, I saw a police car outside of my house. Oh my gosh! While I was out, something had happened to my mom. The front door was open, and I ran inside to see a policeman in the lounge, and my mom sat on the sofa crying. I ran in and gave her the biggest hug and asked her what was wrong. She told me that she was so worried about me running away, she had called the police. Oh, when the police realized everything was okay, they left. Mom and I had a long talk that evening. I told her what Melanie told me, hoping Mom would tell me it was all a lie. But she shook her head and cried. She said, I was now old enough to learn the truth about our family. She told me that when Melanie was a teenager, she had got involved with the wrong people and had got addicted to drugs. She had even stolen money from her. She moved in with her friends, and Mom hardly ever saw her and couldn't help her. Then one day, Melanie turned up on her doorstep with me. I was only a few days old. Melanie said she couldn't cope with me, so she left her with Mom. That was the last time Mom saw Melanie. I couldn't believe Mom had lied to me. I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room. I didn't know who I was anymore. I refused to speak to Mom, and I blocked Melanie on Facebook so she could never contact me again. However, I couldn't go on with my life like that. I had tons of questions that needed to be answered, and the more that passed, the more I felt the need to talk to her. Eventually, I unblocked Melanie and got back in contact with her. I told her I really want to know about her past and why she's never tried to contact me through all these years. But for a start, it's enough that we are open to get to know each other and see where it goes. That was a few months ago. I was finally able to forgive Mom for lying to me for all these years. I realized that even though my birth mom couldn't be a good mom to me, my grandma was the best mom anyone could ever wish for. There was no way I would still be mad at her. My relationship with my birth mom is still developing. She apologized for how harsh she was to me in the past, and she promised me that she hasn't taken drugs for a long time. Letting her in my life wasn't easy, but I can't say that I'm not happy that I met her. Not only that, but my mom has let her in too, and they're making up for the time they lost together. I could see from the way she behaves that she regrets the past, and she's trying hard to regain our trust. Today, I am sharing this story with both of their support as they're sitting beside me. I love them both, and I understand that circumstances were not in their favor in the past.
I was having the best vacation of my life before I ended up alone in the middle of the ocean. Now, you might wonder how the heck a person would end up lost in the middle of the ocean on a family vacation. Well, you can say that my luck isn't exactly typical. Before everything had escalated to this, I was planning a trip with both of my parents to the Caribbean islands. You see, my family is kind of rich, the kind that can afford to rent out a private jet when they go on vacations, and that's exactly what we did. On the 1st of October, we packed our stuff and were ready to enjoy an adventurous weekend. I didn't pack much. In fact, I didn't need much. Just some clothes and my special parachute suit, which I always take with me on every vacation if I ever feel like parachuting. I could honestly tell you guys that parachuting is the thing that gets me excited the most. The sensation flying in the air can't be compared to any other feeling in the world. In most cases, my father jumps with me, and we land together on the island. However, this time, things kinda took a different turn. As I was getting ready to jump, I stood near the door of the jet waiting for my father as he was getting ready to join. When I looked down, I could see that we were almost near the land, and I was getting really excited to jump. The view looked so amazing. So I took out my phone from my jacket pocket and took a picture. But that's when something happened that took me off guard. My phone slipped from my hand, and I quickly leaned forward without thinking, hoping I would catch it. You could probably assume that at that point, what I did was very stupid because it had caused me to lose my balance and trip off the jet. Oh my God, I couldn't believe this was actually happening to me at the moment. Everything was so quick that I couldn't even utter a word or scream for help, and I started falling as I heard my parents screaming my name. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. And I just thought that I'll do what I always do, except that this time I was gonna land without my father. About 10 seconds later, the automatic parachute went off, which meant that something was wrong. It must have been the way I fell out of the jet, I thought. It was going too fast, and I did not jump correctly. I was heading towards the earth without any idea where I might land. But when I looked underneath, all I could see was water everywhere. I honestly wasn't sure if I'd land in the sea, but I was hoping I wouldn't, because it was going to be a big problem. Before I knew it, I had hit the ocean. I had to act fast to avoid drowning. I remembered the instructions that said if you land in the water, you must get your chest strap off to take the gear off quickly and swim beneath the parachute. Even though I was panicking like crazy, I tried to calm myself down, because I really needed to focus on what I was doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't survive. It took me a while before I managed to focus on the way I was swimming. I was honestly scared to death that my feet would get tangled up in the parachute and drown me with it. When I looked around me, all I saw was water. No ships, no land, no people, nothing. I took my shoes off to help ease my movement, and I swam around towards where I thought could be the way to the island. But I realized after a while that there was no way for me to know if I was swimming in the right direction. At that moment, I started realizing that I was in much bigger trouble than I thought I was in. I can't even describe the feeling I had. I have never been more scared in my entire life. My body was tired. Swimming started to become exhausting, and I honestly wondered whether that was going to be my last day alive. Then a thought hit me. I remembered all of the adventures I had taken with my parents and how there were a lot of hard times. At that moment, I knew that feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to get me anywhere. I needed to fight to stay alive. I never thought I would be put in that kind of situation. Well, to be fair, there were times that it had passed my mind, though I think everyone has had those kind of worst-case scenario thoughts, but never did I think of that. I thought about all the best ways to retain my energy. My biggest problem was that my body felt like lead. I didn't want to push myself too hard and sink to the bottom, so I decided to float for a while. However, with more time to think, more bad thoughts kept coming to mind. I was in the middle of the ocean. What if a shark came up from the water and decided to eat me? They could smell blood for miles, and their jaws could snap down on me quick. Even while I was floating, there would have been a shark creeping along the bottom of the ocean, just waiting for the right moment to attack. Needless to say, I was feeling uneasy. Even if it wasn't a shark, what if a freak storm hit and washed me further away from where my parents were looking? The weather around the island was supposed to be superb around this time of year, But that didn't mean the weather couldn't change at any moment. I knew deep down that it may have been illogical, but at that moment, logic seemed to be the last thing that made it to the top of my mind. I never felt so weak in my life. There was nothing I could control. If something went wrong all of the ways out here, I would end up dead, and my parents wouldn't even know what happened to me. I was out in the open with nothing to do but swim around, and I was hardly the fastest thing in the sea. There was no mistaking how vulnerable I was out there. So many thoughts that seemed to weigh me down more than my own tired body. I started to panic again and started to swim again, trying to do all I could to make some sort of safety fast. Then I thought better of it. I knew that I needed to calm down if I wanted to survive. The only thing I could do was wait. But if I used up all of my energy then and there, I wouldn't have any later in case I desperately needed it. I didn't know if there were any sharks around, but if there were, I would not go down without a fight. Those may have been empty words, but they made me feel better at the moment. I started thinking about other things. I wanted to fill the time by thinking about anything that would take my mind off of the situation that I was in. Lying there, looking up at the sky, I started to play little games in my mind. I looked at the clouds and found images in them. And then I would remember times that would fit with the image. I saw slopes and remembered how my family went skiing the year before. Skiing down the mountains and feeling the cold on my face while surrounded by the thick snow. The hot chocolate I drank when we all sat down in the lobby at the end of the day, and the fireplace in our room as we sat and played board games. It was one of my favorite memories of last year. The clouds started to drift through the sky, passing me by, on their way for their own adventure. I could see the sun start to dip in the sky, but I didn't know how much time had passed. My body was starting to ache all over. From hitting the water to swimming as hard as I could, I was pushing myself further than I ever had. The worst part was not knowing how much longer I would need to continue pushing. At that moment, I couldn't even panic. I was too tired to do anything else but float. Trying to do anything else would take too much energy. As the sun drifted lower in the sky, I thought how beautiful the orange glow over the water looked, and I started to wonder, would that be the last thing I saw before I died? When the sun had completely faded in the sky and the stars started to show, my body started to falter. I could feel myself dipping underwater and tried focusing all of my attention on staying afloat just a little longer. I could feel tears in my eyes, but they were covered by the water. I clenched my eyes shut tight, my mind once again drifting towards the negative. I wasn't going to be found. Maybe my parents were looking in the wrong place. And what if my swimming earlier was in the wrong direction and I made it harder on them? I started to come down on myself harder than I ever had before. I opened my eyes again and looked up at the stars. One stood out above all the rest. It was brightly reflected on the water, but when I looked up, I didn't see it. When the light got brighter and brighter, I realized that it wasn't a star, but a boat. I smiled to myself as it came closer to me. Then I used the last of my strength to zoom out as the boat came near. Relief filled my body. I didn't know how long I was there, nor did I know if I would make it. But just being able to see the help coming for me made all the difference in the world. The crew helped me up onto the boat and led me over to a small cot that they laid out for me. It wasn't until I was out of the water that I realized how cold I actually was. When they saw me shivering, they wrapped me up tight to fight off the cold night and headed off in the direction of the island. It was finally over. I was brought to the local hospital and waited for my parents to arrive. They fussed over me for quite some time, trying to make sure that I didn't have any cuts or bruises, and to make sure that I was rested and nice and healed. Even though I was surrounded by strangers, it felt good to be back on dry land again. When my parents burst into the room, I could see the worry on their faces. My body wasn't too beat up, but being in the ocean for so long made me look worse than I was. My dad immediately went to asking questions, trying to find out if there was anything wrong with me. My mom came to my bed and held me tight in her arms. I hugged her back, so happy to be near her again. When she finally let go, I could see that her eyes were red and puffy. My dad came over to me next and apologized for not getting there sooner and told me how he hired every available boat to search for me. I shook my head and gave him a hug too. I was just happy that he was there now. From then on, I knew not to take life for granted Every moment is precious and should be spent appreciating everything that you have, because you never know when it may be gone. So yeah, call it bad luck or even a stupid mistake. I can't really argue with either one, but I'm just glad that it had a happy ending.